Looking at the 2015 election platforms, political aspirants seem to be falling over each other to spend more on infrastructure. The political consensus is echoed by a number of think tanks and organizations across the spectrum. But what do economists really think about infrastructure investment in today's context? Here are 6 questions an economist would consider. First, can infrastructure spending fight off a recession? Some argue infrastructure spending can play an important countercyclical fiscal policy role. In other words, give a bit of a boost to the economy in times of an economic slowdown. However, others argue the slowdown is driven by commodity price changes, and in this context, the effectiveness of fiscal policy is muted. Also, a general infrastructure program is unlikely to hit the weak parts of the economy at the right time, in the right places. Second, can the federal budget afford more infrastructure spending? This might require deficit spending. Pushing the deficit toward $10 billion for 2 years amounts to 0.5% of GDP, which is really small potatoes relative to our ability to pay, and has virtually no impact on the long-run sustainability of our public finances. Third, do public infrastructure projects pay sufficient returns? Researchers have found public infrastructure makes workers and firms more productive, and the impact on quality of life might also be large. Fourth, do interest rates affect the affordability of projects? We want to compare a project's internal rate of return, a measure of how much we benefit from the project, with the cost of funds, sometimes called a hurdle rate. As the government's borrowing costs are currently at historic lows, more projects should now have returns exceeding the hurdle rate and get a financial thumbs up. Fifth, are we already investing enough in infrastructure? It's useful to look at the time series of public infrastructure spending to get a sense of where we are. The chart shows that between 1981 and the onset of the financial crisis in 2008, government infrastructure investment bounced around 3% per year. In response to the need for fiscal stimulus, Canada ramped up infrastructure spending until 2010. After that point, we fell back in the same range for investment we saw in the previous decades. Given low costs of borrowing, you can argue that we should be investing much more today than we were in the 1980s and 1990s. Sixth, should the federal government be doing this? Some economists argue that the federal government ought to leave it to the provinces to choose and finance infrastructure projects, so it's clear who's paying for what. However, local infrastructure can have national consequences. For example, ports like Vancouver's serve as national infrastructure, shipping out goods like Saskatchewan potash and prairie-grown wheat, durum, and canola. The federal government can properly account for the cross-border externalities. Moreover, if the federal government takes on some more of the financial load for infrastructure, they can lighten the fiscal burden of the provinces. Taking all this together, what should the next government do? That depends on how the 6 factors above are weighted, of course. But it seems clear that a fairly strong economic case can be made for increasing the federal government's role in infrastructure projects. Follow us on Twitter at TLCE Econ, and visit our website for more videos.